Right, well, it's that time of the week again. It's coming thick and fast at the moment. So, welcome to the Malt Travel podcast, and this is episode 28. It's quite surprising. So, Nick and Bruce are with us. Nick's got beer in hand. Bruce is just getting himself ready to go out for some few beers.
You're listening, look, yes.
Right, let's let me turn. Hang on. Turn the music off. Right, there we go. Wonderful. So, yes, gentlemen, good evening. It's the
Evening.
19th of December, so Merry Christmas nearly, or Merry Lockdown. It feels a bit like deja vu, doesn't it? Then we were exactly a year ago.
Merry Lockdown up here.
Yeah, I did my staff briefing on Thursday and Friday and said that, so it feels like very much like we were this time last year. Although up in Yorkshire, you were still able to drink, I think, at this point. You just about to go into tier 2 or whatever it was. We'd been in tier 2 since October. We'd been in tier 2. So
we could have if we were eating, we could still have a beer at this time because I know you the Fox, the marquee, they were selling pizzas for like a pound. So you made it last. So we were on slice 12 later. It was deemed to be eating. Yeah. That was the Scotch egg argument raging, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know all your lad wanted to know, Bruce, was saying that he was eating. Could he have a beer with it? I remember when we came and met you. Yeah. He was adamant because he was eating, even though he was under 18, because he was having a meal. He could have a beer, but I explained to him that by law that is possible, but it's all down to the landlord. At the end of the day, it's down to the landlord's decision whether he wants anybody under the age of 18 who's having a meal to have a drink, and it's that substantial thing again. But at that point, the government were saying what the Scotch egg was a substantial meal, so I suppose a pizza would have done the job anyway.
I know. It seems madness, doesn't it, when you think about it now, all the arguments about Scotch eggs and... Yeah.
Well, I say, I mean, at least you were getting a drink, because in this neck of the woods, the pub shut in October and didn't reopen then until, whatever it was, March, wasn't it? So at this point, this time last year, I'd not been to a pub since October when I was with Nick in the bloody Whitby Brewery. That was last time that I had a drink by this point, so I was getting pretty desperate. So I must admit, this last couple of days I've been out having a few drinks because.
Well, I was going to say numbers of subscriptions you have and boxes arriving at your door. You're probably more beer than most pubs around here anyway.
I'll come to that in a minute with my own. I've had my Untapped year just coming in. Right, gentlemen, are we on a little drink tonight just to keep us in Christmas mood? Nicholas, what are you on tonight?
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail.
Yeah, I can't remember where I picked this one up from. I mean, I've obviously said it a lot before. It's Black Sheep's. They do one Monty Python themed. So they've been doing it for a few years. And it wouldn't be the one that I would normally pick off the shelf. So I'm just wondering whether it was bought as a bit of a present for me. So I thought, I'll clear this one out tonight. So just on the Holy Grail. I've been out for a quick one up at the old Molten Royal Oak, just on a walk out by the river earlier on today. Only had time for a pint. So I had a pint of Great Newsome. You'll do. Very nice. Christmas beer, but it's not got any spice or anything like that in it. But it's just a nice, darker, warming beer. So that was quite nice.
Good. And I know, Bruce, you're off to the Fox shortly, but have you done a beer?
No, not. We'll go on now. I'm keeping powder dry. But you're Great News from cases here now. So
good. Well, in fact, I've had a few beers, so I've had a fairly quiet day. We had rugby this morning with Finney. We were down at burnt wood when it was 2 degrees and you couldn't see the post from one end of the pitch to the other. So that was pretty cold. So I must admit, I've been on the mull side this afternoon trying to warm up. But I've just now grabbed my Thornbridge, so I'm on there. Blood Orange Halcyon, which I think about this before in the podcast. It's quite nice actually. It's an Imperial IPA, 7.4% with a bit of a Christmassy orange to it. So it's very nice. And I've got a couple of Christmas beers, big can, and a couple of Christmas beers that I'm going to talk about tonight. And Nick, be glad to hear the Thornbridge boxes arrive. So we've got a couple of Thornbridges for when you come down a bit later this week as well.
Depends if I arrive or not, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be after Christmas and lockdown and things. So the plan this week, it's fairly a short one, but again a bit like buzzes really. We haven't seen each other for ages, and then we obviously met up on the Transpennine Real Ale Trail a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that in the podcast last week. And then actually Nick came down last weekend because we had a few things going on. And we managed to sneak a couple of hours ourselves out in Stone, which we've talked a little bit before on the podcast. Bruce, I don't think you've been to Stone, have you? Have ever
Yeah, you got married at Stone, didn't you? That's the only time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But we didn't go to the pubs, did we? We were in Newcastle where we went to the pubs. So it's definitely worth a visit. It's in between Stoke-on-Trent and Stafford. It is on the West Coast main line, although you've got to get one of the local trains to be able to get off. So that's the plan. Me and Nick are going to talk a little bit about our little trip around Stone. Purposely really was go to see the new Jules War, which is a brand new pub. In fact, as always with this podcast, we're kind of groundbreaking. The week after this week, there's been loads of stuff in beer Twitter and a couple of the kind of beer magazines about talking about that new pub that we went to and saying, you can still build pretty good pubs. We always talk about, we talk a lot about, don't we, Victorian pubs and fantastic old pubs, but a couple of people were saying, actually, you can still, that's an example of how you can do a really, really good pub in the 21st century. And, see what, we're waiting.
It's not a new build, though, is it? It's not a new building.
It's not a new building. Oh, no, actually, most of that building is new. I know they have used a little bit of the old buildings, but most of it is new. But anyway, we'll hold our powder and see what your view of it was, because obviously we're a bit biased. So, quick beery highlights then. Bruce, you sent a slightly blurry picture, so I don't know how many beers you had. So, you'd been into the Swan in P-Zone Green?
It was, yes. It was lunchtime at work, so we were actually drinking. We went for our lunch. The food took forever to come out, and my friend had ordered mixed grill. He was like that beard meets food man gobbling it down. Get back to work. Much to the disgust of some visiting tourists. But yeah, I like though was this cat, this immovable cat. We thought it was a cushion. It's actually a cat. This is on this stool. Near this insanely large fire they've got there. The Black Swan, of course, one of York's most historic pubs, but doesn't get a lot of footfall because it is in the town centre. It's just within the walls, but it's at the end of Stonebow. Yeah. So, of course, if you come to the Shambles, most people turn right. Well, actually, we went to the Shambles, came at the bottom of the Marks Spencer and turned left, 5 minutes. We've got this astonishing pub, and as you can see from that back room, is probably really one of York's finest pub rooms. We don't go often enough. It oozes character. It is really almost, feels almost medieval.
Yeah, you talked about it a lot actually when we did the York, that York trio. You said, and certainly we've all been in there. And like you say, it's a bit deceptive. And on the outside, it looks quite I won't say a new building, but it's had a bit of a retap. But actually, inside, it's very, very old, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I said just get the footfall, so it's well worth a visit. Then a week last Tuesday, Nick Hugh came through, didn't we? We visited 6 or 7 pubs. We visited, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
Which was quite good fun. And last Saturday night, I was in Leeds and I was going to do the Headingley run, but I did go to White Locks and the Angel, both which were packed, especially White Locks. If ever there's looking COVID in the eye and getting away with it, was that Saturday afternoon trip to White Locks. They were ramming there like sardines. But then I was going to take my son on the Headingley run because he was paying me to do it. We dropped my wife and daughter off at a Gary Barlow concert, and astonishingly, the ticket tout, who couldn't actually sell his tickets, gave us 2 tickets. He gave us 2 tickets. What the chance of that happening? So much to Ben's disappointment, we too ended up watching Gary Barlow.
And a great night was
lovely. Great night. So, I've been watching Gary Barlow. I've been kind of wandering around, mostly with my son actually, who was still 16. So he had a lot of soft drinks. I've had a couple of really nice Christmassy beers. Nick was on Christmas beers. So on Thursday night, I was in Mellards, and they had on draft the Bruichladdich barrel aged whiskey sour. Which is from Brewgooder, who are again one of those interesting. We perhaps need to do a bit more discussion on Brewgooder because they're one of these kind of sustainable, very forward-thinking brewers, and they plant trees and do wonderful things. So it was 11%. So after discussion with the bar guy, he did say I'd have it in a third if I was used. So I had a third, and I've got to say it was lovely. It was so honey. It was the honey, and they said I went back in yesterday, and they said there's no actually honey in it. It's just the what did he say? It was the heather, I think, that they used in the whiskey that had come through. So that was really nice. And then
how much was that for a third?
For a third, it was about £3 something. It was about £3, £3.60, I think it was for a third. It wasn't bad.
I know when you sent me that link, the bottle was what, £11.95?
Yeah, £11.95.
500 milliliter bottle. So
they claim there's only 15 casks of that out in the country, so it was quite rare. In fact, it actually gone when I got in there yesterday. It actually gone.
And then the lads have done well to get it, then, haven't they?
Yeah. Then the one I tried yesterday was Timmermans from Belgium, which was their Gordon Christmas ale, which again that was really nice as well. Now that was £7 a pint. So again, I had a half, which is about $3.60, I think they were charging.
Well, they were the first really fruit what I would call craft beers to ever come over here. I mean, I know they've been brewing those fruit beers for centuries, but I know if you went in a real ale pub and you looked at the bottle collection, the bottles then were all just Belgian beers, weren't they? Now you go in a lot of craft bars and they've got more bottles and cans behind the bar than they've actually got on tap. But Timmermans, I always remember the cherry one, the cherry beer. Timmermans was the famous one, wasn't it?
I think the problems we had yesterday with everywhere we went, beers were good and good form. And I said to Bruce, they weren't too busy most places. We did go in a new place. It was absolutely Rams. We came so now and again. But most of the beers were such high ABVs. I ended up in the last point of call, Nick, I got in the Boat and Horses, which had just recently reopened, actually, the new landlady. They had 5 casks on, but in the end, they went for Jaipur. Because again, everything else was just mad crazy, and most of the craft bars were in. It was 8% stuff that you were drinking.
And the Coach and Horses is a traditional pub, isn't it?
Boat and Horses, very traditional.
But sorry, the Boat and Horses, So you can't think that the clientele in there would want particularly high. So I wouldn't say they were a craft clientele, put it that way.
Yeah. And then the other part of my week, I know these two are on Untapped, but I'm on Untapped, which is this way where you kind of log in your beers and you kind of go through it. And they do a really nice thing at the end of the year is they summarize the whole year for you in your beery world. So I just thought I'd share some of the. In fact, it's gone up slightly because I've updated some yesterday. So this year I have tried 365 beers, or I've keyed in 465 beers. It says 453 for those on YouTube. My top beer was Brew York, Fairy Tale of Brew York. That was my top beer of the year, followed by the Titanic Plum Porter. I've been to we'll put down here. I've been to 104 different bars and pubs and locations to sample beers, and I have sampled beer from 183 breweries, and the Untapped average is 21. Most people on Untapped are 21 breweries. I've been to 183. So can you guess what my top breweries are? Which breweries I've drank the most beers from?
Thornbridge.
Thornbridge is 30. I've had 32 Thornbridge beers this year. 32 Thornbridge beers this year.
Oh.
I've had
Titanic.
No, actually they're low down because I've had 13 Beartown beers. I've had 11 Brew York, 8 Buxton, and 7 Roosters, which is we had a one go, didn't we? Roosters. Yeah. So I just thought I'd share that one. It's quite fun actually when you look back at your year and see what you've done.
Yeah,
so.
I think the reason why me and you aren't on Untapped, Bruce, because normally we go to the pub, we're always with somebody else to talk to. It seems that Untapped. Michael sent me a link the other day, and he said he was sat in Mallards, and I went on Untapped, and there was another bloke posting about what he was drinking. There was another bloke called Michael H on there, but it wasn't him. It was some other bloke in another part of the country. I said, anybody on Untapped, it must be single bloke sat in the pub just tapping away on the phones.
No, I'm looking at the tasting notes. I'm keen on this. Now, Bruce, some bad news for you, Brew York. Well, I don't know if you heard this. Brew York are withdrawing a Big Eagle from their core range. There was a really good podcast from the Beer O'Clock Show, the Opinions guys. They had one of the founders of Brew York on. Really good. Actually, it was nearly a 2-hour podcast. It was really worth listening to, actually, to get a chance over Christmas, Beer O'Clock Show. And he was saying, they every kind of this time of year, Brew York, he said that basically we do, despite all of our philosophy, we have to go by the market. Because that's how you run a brewery, basically.
Yeah.
And I think he said there are 5 beers now that they've withdrawn over the last kind of 5 or 6 years. Not because they're crap beers, because they're fantastic beers, but they're just not making enough. They're not turning them up over. And he said Big Eagle's one of them. Obviously, Big Eagle used to be Big Eagle, didn't it? Because it was quite strong, wasn't it? It was stronger than it was now. And it's 6.4, I think, on cask at the moment. So yeah, they're going to withdraw it. So it'll only be brewed as a seasonal. He said once or twice a year. But then he did drop in that what they are going to do in the first recarnation is they are collaborate with Thornbridge. And he explained that Big Eagle is a West Coast IPA kind of California way, and Jaipur is another West Coast IPA. So they are going to get together and they're going to brew one Jaipur Big Eagle at Brew York, and then they're going to brew one Big Eagle Jaipur at Thornbridge. And it'd be really interesting to see kind of how the subtleness of the brewery. The Brew York will brew the Brew York one and do, work out what they're going to do. And Thornbridge will do that. So that'll be something worth looking forward to. I think a Big Eagle Jaipur mix-up, which would be quite interesting, that, won't it?
They have it in cans at the moment, Bruce, in Morrisons on Foss Island. I noticed the other day, £3 a can.
Yeah, it's a good beer, and it's a really good beer, and it's quite deceptive, isn't it? Really, because it doesn't taste that strong.
It's a cost that still I have issues with. £3 for a can of beer. So, but yeah, I spotted it. They had it in there. So, if you want any for Christmas, get yourself to Morrisons on.
I'm going to go off slightly tangent now, and again, probably those on YouTube, this will work best for you who watch this on YouTube. So there was another story. It's not quite a beery story per se in the Financial Times this week. So I'm going to see whether, and I've put the link in there for those on YouTube. I'm going to see whether these two can pick up what it might have been about. So it's something to do with a French chateau and a Lancashire miners' club.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. No ideas yet.
So, some kind of Trappist brew then?
Some kind of Trappist brew. It's not necessarily beer I'm talking about here. It's certainly something I'm going to be drinking this Christmas.
Oh, I don't know.
So I've given you another clue there.
Well, Benedictine.
And I've given you another clue there.
Oh.
That's the Burnley Football Club club badge.
Happy place.
And there's another club. There's another option there, which is the Burnley Miners Social Club. So, do you know that the Burnley Miners Social Club is the Benedictine pub of the year, or the bar of the year, where they sell the most Benedictine in any one place? And rather than getting an OXO at Burnley Football Club, you can actually have a Benny and Hot, which is a Benedictine with a dash of hot water in it. That's what they actually sell at the rugby club, at the football club. Sorry. So, do you know the story of this, guys? Nick, I thought you might know this story.
Yeah.
No.
It's to do with the First World War. Why do you think Burnley, and in particular Accrington?
Oh, they're the Accrington Pals and Burnley Pals.
The Pals.
Right. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So the story is that in the First World War, the East Lancashire and particularly Accrington Pals, the East Lancashire Regiment and particularly Accrington Pals were stationed in around Feckham, which is in kind of central, kind of north France. And in Christmas, one Christmas, they were, a lot of them obviously were shell shocked and were injured, and they used one of the local chateaus to kind of put them up as a rehabilitation, as a hospital kind of area. And this chateau just happened to be the place where they make Benedictine. And so all the soldiers were drinking it. And so when they came back to the UK, when they went back to Lancashire, they had this flavour for it. So that working men's club in Burnley is the biggest single outlet for Benedictine, and even Wetherspoons sells it in Burnley as well. If you go to Wetherspoons in Burnley and ask for a Benny and Hot, they'll know what you're talking about. So I just thought it was interesting.
It's not unpleasant, is it, Benedictine?
No, it's lovely with hot water actually. As a bit of a toddy. I mean, it's quite herbal. It's got a mix of herbs. And I say it was a story where a French aristocrat, a guy called Legrand.
Benedictine's is brandy and honey base, isn't it?
It's got honey. I wouldn't say it's brandy.
Brandy
it's a bit thinner than brandy. It's really, I think, quite nice. And I say if you drop a little bit of hot water in it and possibly a little bit of sugar, it's a very, very nice drink. So I just thought, anyway, it's worth chasing that article up if you just go into Financial Times.
That's extraordinary, that, isn't it?
Yeah, really good. I mean, I don't know whether you guys have seen this as well. This is Sean, who's again we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit, and we had a bit of banter with him because these two moaned about the outside of the Maltines in York in the last lockdown. And I just picked this up. Sean had tweeted this week about Timothy Taylor's Landlord Dark, which is a new line.
Ramtam, then,
right? Yeah, which is what Ramtam used to be. Right. So they've part of that Taylor's kind of rebranding. So yeah, Landlord Dark.
Well, it's not rebranded. It's easier for hopefully folk tomorrow in the country recognising Taylor's landlord again.
I must admit, you're not seeing Ramtam for a while.
Well, people in the south won't know what Ramtam is, will they?
Yeah.
But if it's landlord, then they'll think, oh yeah, Timothy Taylor's Landlord, my favourite beer. There we are. Different.
So they've got that on in the Maltines, but it might keep your eyes open see it anywhere else as well. Really interesting. Right, so we've talked about Stone in Staffordshire a couple of times before, really, and I think I mentioned that I'd sat through a really good talk from the managing director, and I think when on that podcast, I'd said that actually for a while Stone was almost as big a brewing capital as is Burton, which is a little bit further down the Trent, and obviously Burton still is very much renowned for its beers, or unfortunately now it's all the mega brands that are kind of there, and I think there's only kind of Martins who are hanging on, and they're part of Heineken, aren't they, these days? So actually, Stone used to have a lot of breweries, in particular one called Bent's. And in fact, there are now 2 breweries in Stone. There was a bit of a gap for about think in the 70s when the initial breweries closed down, there's a bit of a gap, and then in the early 2000s, there's been a resurgence of brewing. So Limestone Brewery now in the old Bent Brewery, which is just on the edge of Stone. And Nick, I know you tried some of those beers when we were in Stone on the day as well. They've got a growing pub. The word is estate as well. There's a couple of my neck of the woods in Newcastle on the Lyme. They opened in 2008. They have a tap called the Boar Hall, which is next to the brewery, and they do quite a range of beers. Mainly kind of golden type beers. They do, I think Einstein's been my favourite, which is a bit one of those kind of beer hybrids, lager kind of bitter hybrids. The brewer's daughter now is also brewing a lager as well, which is again, I think it's something to do with cats. Is that lager? I'll come to you back in a minute. But what we're really looking for in Stone was Jowls or Jewels. So Jewels were one of the biggest brewers in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They decided that their market would be America as opposed to India. And in fact, for a time, Jewels were selling more beer than Bass were, because Bass went east and they sent their beers down the Trent and Mersey to Hull and out into the obviously to the the continent. Whereas Jewels use the Trent and Mersey Canal the other way, because that's where the Stone sits, and they sent their beers to Liverpool, which then went on to North America and Canada. And I think if you remember, we said that this led to quite a lot of rivalry, and in the end, in the 70s, Bass bought Jewels out, and it was one of those things actually that kind of kicked off CAMRA. And it was at that time when people started to get interested in that. So the brewery in Jewels, the Jewels Brewery, actually used to be bang on the high street. In fact, Nick point out to you, Nick, where I think it's the Home Bargains now. But in there, the brewery clock is still bang in the middle. There's a picture here on YouTube. It's still bang in the middle of the high street. So Jewels, again, was set up as a brewery in 1758 when somebody called Francis Jewell came along. And so the company were very much based in there. But I say that they decided that they would go to Americas rather than to the India and everywhere else that the Bass went to. But unfortunately, in 1970, they were taken over by Bassarrington. And although there was an agreement that they would carry on brewing Jewels beers in Stone, very quickly they simply mothballed the whole plant, stopped brewing, took away the name, stopped brewing Jewels beer completely. And it's been a fairly battle that's lasted about another 50 years to kind of return that and get that turned around. And that's a story of Jewels. So an interesting thing there, as I said, there's quite a few on the archive. There's quite a lot of information about the death of Jewels and people protesting with coffins and things outside the Bass
There weren't that many people protesting, was there?
No. They've all got big flares and long hair, as always in the 70s. But it was one of the, I think, was it Wadsworth? One of the London, again, Roger Protz was talking about this week. I think there was something happened, didn't they, in that one of the London breweries about the same time was being closed down as well. Anyway, the resurgent was that in 2010, a couple of guys who had backgrounds in brewing managed to agree with Bass to have the license to rebrew Jewels' beer. And one of the stipulations was that they couldn't brew in Stone. So actually they ended up going to Market Drayton, which is just over the borders in Shropshire, and built a brand new brewery behind a very old pub, the Red Lion. And it's a pretty impressive brewery now. And I know Nick hasn't been there yet, so we're hoping maybe over Christmas, fingers crossed, if we can, we'll get the brewery. Again, for those on YouTube, the brewery is on the right-hand side, but that is behind the pub that's on the top picture, which is what was the Red Lion in Market Drayton. And the brewery, you can just see the brewery tower behind it actually as well. It's a brand new brewery they're built in 2010. And is a really nice place. And again, I know Nick's interested because Nick, this is the back room, and this is all the Mounty Thompson furniture, which again is up there as in Thirsk. And apparently this was a bank. There was a bank in Leeds that had this in their their senior executive room. And when they built the brewery and the brewery tap, they managed to get all this. It came down in 3 vans, I understand, and they've completely kind of rebuilt it in their back bar, in their back tap room bar. And I think there was something like I don't know, 18 or 19 mice that you can find either on the furniture or actually in that fantastic paneling. And
Fireplace,
for those on YouTube, you'll see the red crosses everywhere, which can be mentioned is I think it was the 6th trademark of the world. Bass is number 1, but I think Jewels' triangle was number 6. So a really interesting brewery, worth definitely looking out. Again, they've got a growing estate. They go across the Shrew. They've got beers, pubs in Shrewsbury. They're moving to Cheshire now as well, but mainly focused around the.
Well, is that why Bass wouldn't let them brew in Newcastle? Because that was Staffordshire.
Yeah, they couldn't brew in Stone again because that was in Staffordshire, so that was stipulation. So they went over a border.
They brew into Shropshire.
They claim the aquifer. They claim that it's the same water in Market, which isn't a million miles away. Market Drayton, it's probably about 8-9 miles away. And they claim that it's on the same aquifer that Stone is, and that's one reason why they chose Market Drayton. So anyway, Nick and I, we had a couple of hours. We were going for a family meal a little bit later on at Aston Marina, which is just outside Stone. So we managed to get a quick lift in. It was, unfortunately, another horrible wet December Saturday, wasn't it? Very, very similar to our experience in West Yorkshire. But anyway, we managed to keep dry in the pubs. So
we didn't have to get any taxis.
We didn't get any taxis, no.
Because Bruce went with us.
So we kicked off actually in another local brewery, which was Titanic. So Titanic Brew, we've mentioned obviously from Stoke-on-Trent. And they have a great pub in Stone, which is the Royal Exchange. So, Nick, your thoughts on the Royal Exchange? A little bit outside the town centre, about a 5-minute walk, though.
Oh, yeah, hardly that. I mean, Stone isn't a big place anyway, so easy enough to find. And I asked you whether it had always been a pub, and I think you said, yeah. And, it's one of them classic corner buildings, but at least it's still being used as a pub because you see these dotted around the country that have been closed and that's it, end of their lives, really, and then converted into houses or whatever else. So, yeah, it was very steady in there, but like you said, that was probably down to the weather also.
Weather was great, yeah.
Unfortunate in this case, I'm a supporter of Wetherspoons, but once again, 5 minutes walk back into town. The Wetherspoons there wasn't a seat to spare in there, was there?
No, there wasn't. We stood up, didn't we? Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the clientele in there, you would have normally expected to see in a pub like the Royal Standard. A classic locals pub, as it were, where guys going on their own, but they always know there's a chance to have a chat. I mean, there's a bit of chat going on with the Spoons, but that's one thing that Wetherspoons have done. They say, the heart of the community. I don't say they're not. But in this particular case, I would suspect that if Wetherspoons wasn't 5 minutes away, then the Royal Exchange might be a little bit busier.
Yeah. It does get busy, but we sat in the wrong place. We sat in the left-hand side of it and we got turfed out because there was a club or something coming in there. But that was
good, the fact that they were using the space for things like that. We didn't mind at all.
We got sat by the fire. They had 2 nice fires in there.
16 bums on seats, a little bit later on. That's fair play. I'll stand outside if I need to, if a pub can keep open by doing that, by allowing people to come and have their own little private doos and stuff, that's fair enough to me.
Obviously, they mainly focus on the Titanic beers, so there's normally about 5 or 6 of their beers on. They normally have a guest on as well. There was a long-standing relationship with Everard's and Tiger, so you normally get Tiger on all the pubs as well. And I think the drop on here, Nick, wasn't it? I'm a VIP member at Titanic, so I have a kind of members card, and the landlady was very good. She checked it for me. He said, "Well, do you know what? Not only have you got your £1 off this week, you've also got 2 birthday drinks that you didn't take in 21 and 20." So we ended up buying 2 pints for £2.60, which was an absolute bargain.
Oh yeah, the first 2 rounds, say from there, I went to Wetherspoons. The Wetherspoons round, that was another, because I used my camera voucher, that was £3. So our first 2 rounds cost us a £5. So
pretty good.
It was being a bit like in Sam Smith's country.
From the Royal Exchange, if you walk down the hill as you head towards the town centre, Stone's quite an old-fashioned place. It's got a long, windy kind of marketplace, high street, which is pedestrianised, and you come to Granville Square, the top of that, where the buses drop you off. In fact, the buses drop you off straight outside the Wetherspoons. So yeah, this was the old post office in in Stone, which again is quite a popular conversion, isn't it? For we got one in Newcastle Line, which was the post office as well. So the post of Stone is the Wetherspoons in Stone. It's a long building. It's maybe not as character inside, Nick, is it, as some Wetherspoons are?
No, I'll say once again, for a Wetherspoons, it didn't do much for me, to me, actually. I mean, compared to what it looks like outside, knowing that it was an old post office, you'd think there would be a lot more fixtures and fittings. And the only thing I spotted, which I mentioned to you on our way out, were like these 2 little curved little cubby holes. These
it's where they used to have the telephones in the old days. When we have mobile phones, we need to the post office to make a telephone call, and they've kept the old little phone booths, and you can drink in there. But it reminds me of that place in the Crown Liquor Bar in Belfast. Those first little 2 cupboards that you kind of get into.
But other than that, I had to ask you what it actually was, because I say we sort of
you don't really
shuffled in because it was raining. Didn't really take much notice in the outside. didn't pick up from its name the post of stone that it was a post office. And I said to you, well, what did it used to be?
Yeah.
And you said post office, which I suppose explains that what is now the bar would have been the long counter. But otherwise, all right, Tim might always make sure he's got pictures and posters and information on the walls, but couldn't get at them because it was that busy. And otherwise, the building seemed to be pretty characterless, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's just like one
certainly.
big long space. There's a bit more of a lounge at the top end. And again, the other thing I noticed in these Wetherspoons, they've all got tellies, these Wetherspoons, in our area. They've all always showing like sport or news, which, again, I remember rightly, Wetherspoons were anti-tellies, weren't they?
Well, that used to be his Lloyd's number one bars. He had his Lloyd's number one bars, and they were bars where we'd have sport and music. But I think he's getting rid of most of those now anyway.
Yeah. And I think, Nick, you tried a limestone beer in here, didn't you? I had the Bath I had their festivity Bath Ales. They had a fairly range on. They were mainly kind of big macros, weren't they?
I don't think they did, Mike. I think they had the normal Abbott, Ruddles, Doom Bar, and I think they only had 2 local beers on. Because you went on the stronger Christmas one, and I thought I don't fancy that dark 5.5%. So that's why I went for the limestone.
The limestone
in the end,
the local one as well. Yeah, and like you say, it was very busy because we actually Nick's picture there, Nick at the bar, and we actually ended up standing just where I took the picture from because it was so busy. I say it wasn't great weather. It wasn't great. So walking down the high street, there is a bit of a gap then. There's a new pub called Bear on the left-hand side, which has been at West Bank, which again, I understand now is a national chain. We were hoping, because there's a fairly new micro pub that's been set up just off kind of what was the old market square by the library there, the Wren. But unfortunately, it didn't open until, I think, was it 6 o'clock or something, Nick, wasn't it? It looked quite nice inside.
It looked a lovely little place, so
I've not managed to get into it yet because I think it only opens for short hours. But they apparently do Limestone and Slater's beers in there, which are local, which are good. So unfortunately, we missed out on that, which meant probably we had more time to get into the fantastic Jules Crown Wharf. So as I mentioned, this is a brand new build, a huge complex, Nick, isn't it? Really. Right on the edge of the canal. It's
I can see now that it is a new build. As I say,
bit there,
inside, it was just reminiscent of an old bonding warehouse, and that's why I assumed they'd use some of the old building. But
so this actually, unfortunately, kind of was finished just as kind of lockdown was kicking in. So it didn't really open until this summer, but it's been open since then. I've got to say, the first couple of times I went in, it wasn't great because just getting it. It's a massive. In fact, we spent some time looking at the bar, didn't we, Nick? Because we kind of got a great table. Overlook the bar, and it's a very big bar if you're working behind the bar to kind of work through, really. And we've mentioned before that what they've also done is build quite a few things outside of it as well. There's a community theatre. There's what was the old town's fire station, and they've also made a replica of the Bass Tap, the Cooper's Tavern, which is in Burton, just on the edge of what was the Bass Museum. And again, I know the chief exec said that when they finally paid the £250,000 to buy back the name Jules from Bass, they signed that in the Cooper's Tavern. So it was a little bit of a piss take. And as part of this new complex, they've rebuilt the Cooper's. I don't know what they're going to do with that. It's just like a mock. It's a bit like Coronation Street. It's just like a mock building at the moment. I don't know when they're going to open it. But there's Nick, and we found a lovely little table with a little kind of lounge that's on the kind of canal side, a little bit quiet in there, wasn't it? It was quite nice in there.
It was just ticking over. You tried to point me towards the booze, but I think they were being used for eat. But I mean, it's a heck of a space, heck of a building. Lots of different areas, lots of nice areas. Managed to duck upstairs to the loo. Even things like the staircase, very shallow, nice wide staircase. After you've had a few, you don't want to be going up a rickety old staircase, really. And it was obviously being a private event party going on upstairs. Upstairs, they've got the verandas that open out, so you're looking over the canal. So, I mean, that upstairs room as a private venue room would be a cracking room. Just a lot of nice different areas broken up with booths and paneling and tables. And I was really impressed, really was.
So it's mainly their beers that they have on. They have a range of, they do a bitter, they do a blonde. We're actually on what they call the number 6, which I guess is a dark mild. You probably describe on it. It was quite nice, really. I don't know whether that's on all year round. It's definitely a wintry beer. They do have a couple of keg IPAs as well, and they have their own lager called Green Monkey, which again is worth seeking out. And again, not stupid priced. It was quite. It was about $3.50 a pint, wasn't it? There, I think we paid in the end, something like that in there. But like
I
Nick
remember
said,
it was quite thick. That was. It was quite quite lustrous, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's quite a big venue, and so lots of different spaces that you can eat, and they do food as well. And it seems to tick over. I mean, it was fairly busy, wasn't it? We were in there. People were coming and going quite a lot. The main bar was fairly busy for a horrible December. And then the beauty of this place is you come out back onto the kind of what is kind of stone in a ring road, and in front of you is a much more old traditional pub, which is the Swan, which is a bit of a beer mecca really in Stone. I think Nick, you hadn't been in here before. I know I think we agreed we had been in. I think we've been
one
to
of the beer festivals. I think we'd bought inside and drunk outside.
So the Swan, if you like, is the camera pub of Stone. Really, it's been there for a number of years now. It's just off the canal. As you're kind of heading out Stone towards where there is now the new Marks and Spencer food hall and the leisure centre. So again, we had a fire for Bruce, although he's disappeared at the moment. So there was a nice fire that Bruce would have kept Bruce happy. And again, there was a massive range of beers. Now they always have 8 or 9 cask beers on. And we also mentioned they've got the macro lagers tucked on the corner as well, haven't they? Out of the way. So if you come in, you have to ask for a macro lager, and all you see really is hand pumps. So we did quite a few beers in here. Actually, I tried to make a list. We had the black one was the Acorn Gorlovska Imperial Stout. We had some Abbeydale Double Deception. We had from the Uttoxeter Brewing Company. We had the Admiral Gardner First Law, which is a pale ale. So I think one of those at the front there. And then we also had Coach House, which I've not seen for a while. Coach House, and that was the Old Priory. So we had some good beers in there, didn't we? And they were all on cracking form, and again, all very well priced.
Yeah, I can't think that we had a bad beer all day, to be honest with you.
No, it was good. So we as you can see from the picture on YouTube, we had a pint each. I think I was on a pint of the Abbeydale. I can't remember what you started on a pint of, and then I said we just sampled quite a few. We had about four different beers and halves as well, and shared those. Very young with brothers, so it didn't matter really. So so all in all, it was a cracking little tour really. If we'd had more time, we obviously the Swan is very close to the Star, and the Star is right on the side of the canal. And there was again little thing there. There's a very interesting set of lock gates because they're tucked between the canal and the road bridge, so there's not enough room to have full sets of normal kind of lock gates. So again, if you're on YouTube, the picture there at the bottom there, it's kind of got a 90-degree angle in it. I think it's a master. It's down as a master. I don't think it's a master pub anymore now. It's whatever they took that chain over. But
no, it will still be a Marston's.
Still be Marston's.
Yeah,
you can always get a pint of Banks in there, which again is normally a good pint. And I don't know, we missed this, Nick. I don't know. You see that the sign there has got Spitfire on it, even though the pub is called the Star. And again, a bit of research said the reason why they've got Spitfire on the pub sign is that the pub here, actually in the Second World War, they led and they got together, and Stone actually bought a Spitfire as part of the war effort. And the pub was the kind of driving force behind that, which is why they've always had a Spitfire on their pub sign. So I didn't know that. Picked up this week. The bar to go into, again, if you're on the YouTube, is the bar on the bottom picture, and they call that the Boaters Bar. And it's very stripped back. It's just board, very not just modern floorboards, but very old floorboards. And I say normally that Banks is on not bad form. There is a couple of pubs in the high street. There's a Punch pub in the high street, which is called the Red Lion, which again we didn't go in on this time. They normally have again some really good beers in there, and they claim that is Stone's oldest pub because it very much is in the kind of the thick of the town. I did actually find out. I read this week that Punch taverns have been bought out by somebody as well, which again was a bit of a concern.
Yeah, I think Punch went a while back.
Yeah, and then they're still there, and I said they've just been bought out by again one of these equity firms. And then the other bar that is worth maybe having a look in. They don't do cask beer. Is 10 Green Bottles. So you may have heard me mention this because there's another chain of them in Newcastle on the Line.
Yeah.
Again, they're a kind of craft bar, gin kind of led place that take over shops. The Stone one is quite nice actually. It's and they always have quite a good range of beers on, local and international. Normally about 8 or 9 kegs on. Not cheap, and they don't sell pints, so you can only drink it in thirds or 2/3. So again, there's another couple of good pubs in Stone. There's a few more on the outskirts. Again, you could still have a good day. So I think we had 3 hours or so, and it was steady, wasn't it? We had about 6-7 pints. It was really, really nice.
Well, I mean, we knew we were having a meal later on, so we just took it steady. But
And then-
good little place to wander around.
Yeah, and it's quite compact. And I say you get there, the buzz and stuff is fairly good from the south from Stafford or Birmingham or via the train. And then we actually rounded off the evening in another Titanic pub, which is in Bod. So Nick was actually stopping in a Premier Inn just down the road from Trentham Gardens. And I mentioned this place before. Again, it was another one of those that actually fortunately opened just as lockdown was kicking in. Bod is a kind of cafe bar arm of the Titanic Brewery. They've got about 5 or 6 of these now. And the Trentham one is, well, I remember it was a NatWest bank, but actually apparently before that, it was actually the police station. And in fact, you can actually sit in one of the cells and have a drink. So we managed to get in here for Saturday night, didn't we, Nick? We had a couple of beers in here Saturday night.
That's got to be an artist impression.
Yeah,
at the top
that
there.
one is. Yeah.
It doesn't really look like that, especially on a wet, miserable Saturday night. But
that was
distinctive in it's got that tower there.
Yeah, and that was all right, wasn't it? It's quite eclectic inside. It's all kind of reclaimed wood. It was fairly busy, wasn't it? Because in fact we got sat down. We moved tables, I think, a couple of times because it was.
Well, for anybody stopping, it's the Trentham Gardens Travel Lodge. Anybody stopping there, it's wants real ale because the Travel Lodge, I think, has got a beefeater attached to it. This is literally a 5-minute walk just down the road, so this would be the. If you're into your real ale and you're stopping anywhere over there, this would be your favoured walk out to. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, worth looking for those bods. There's one in Stafford as well. So.
Because Bod is what the name of the guy who owns Titanic Brewery.
That's right. It's linked to one of the brothers. There is. I have read.
And then we found out that one of the daughters has just started making lager.
That's right. There's another lager spin-off as well. Yeah. Stray Cat was the lager I was thinking about for the Limestone Brewery, and then the same thing's happened here in that. One of the families is now brewing lagers, and I can't for life remember what the lager's called. But
no, it was on in the Royal Standard, wasn't it? And I pointed it out.
Yeah. I think it'd have been on in Bod as well, probably.
Never seen it before, and said who's making that, and it was a lady behind the bar. Right. Again, good knowledge.
Yeah.
She said, it's actually been made by the Titanic people, but it's one of the daughters that's started making lager.
Okay, so that was our very brief, but I just trying to round up really 2021, I think, and it's good that at the end of 21 we have been able to get together, the 3 of us and the 2 of us, to have a few beers and just chew the fat and put them together in some podcasts. So I think that's all good. Bruce, I know I just had to run off to have a phone call, so we may not see Bruce now. I don't just keep rambling on for the next whatever it is. So I said the plan for Christmas is fingers crossed. Nick's coming down to Staffordshire for a couple of days, and then we're certainly planning to go up to Northumberland. That's what we're doing at the moment. But we're on the 19th of December now, and obviously the COVID rates are going up, and there's talk in all the papers this weekend about another lockdown, or certainly I think they're calling it a fire break, aren't they, for a couple of weeks. And we already know that
they need to make the decision now, because as I say, just been up to the old Mont Royal Oak this afternoon, and poor old Steve says they've got £1,000 worth of real ale coming in next week.
Yeah,
I'm wondering now,
stuff,
do I cancel it?
Yeah,
it's okay for the bolt stuff. It's okay for the stuff in keg, even though it's got a shelf life of 2 or 3 months. Even though January is quiet, but if you're bringing in real ale, you've got 3 weeks and that's it.
At the moment, what supermarkets are doing, what I've seen, there was one today. Was it 3 packs for 18 quid? So you can pretty much buy 72 cans of beer for 18 quid at the moment. So people aren't even going to do takeaway, are they really? I think looking at the Twitter thing today, in that people have been, pubs have been saying people are going. People are still turning up, and I read somewhere where a guy had cancelled at the pub, but then had bought the whole of their beer fridge out and said, look, we're sorry, we've got a works party, we're not coming, but you know what, we've all chipped in and we'll just buy your beer fridge out off you and can you deliver it to me and I'll send it around them. So people are trying to support.
Well, that's what I said to Steve. I said, look, Steve, if you're left with £1,000 of beer, let us know, and we'll bring our growlers up. Yeah. But that's his dilemma now. If the government turn around and say, yeah, right, we're definitely locking you down, then he knows what to do. But as it is,
I've just read on here that Fuller's have closed 20 of the busiest pubs in central London today, because the footfall's down anywhere 40 to 20% of where they are. So it's not viable keeping them.
Well, that's that work from home, isn't it? If people are working from home like they've been told to do, that's where they're going to lose. That's this time of year when you finish a bit early and you have a few beers on the way back to the tube station or whatever. So it's a rough couple of weeks ahead potentially for our friends in hospitality. So we'll do what we can, and it's just that balancing it, trying to keep yourself safe. And I must admit, we certainly yesterday we walked in a really busy pub and we walked out again. And then the pubs we're into were steady really, and we felt okay in them. There was not much mask wearing going. Mask wearing in the town actually shops was quite good. One or two people in some pubs wearing masks. Some of the staff wearing masks. But obviously that's the bonkers thing because there isn't any rules about wearing a face mask in a pub, is there? There is still the hand gels and things around, but again, didn't look like many people are using them. So it's all a bit confusing. Really. So I say, fingers crossed that we can certainly enjoy Christmas with family at the least. And we'll hope to kind of get together at some point. So whether we do a virtual catch up, whether we can kind of con true and align the moon so we can maybe get together at some point. We'll do our best. But I say it's been really nice. I'm just saying, Bruce, it's been really good at the end of 21 to actually us get together in flesh and have a few beers together. I know you and Nick have been out in York as well together recently, which again is.
We'll take you up to a bit of our village pub tour. No, because I personally think we're in for another 3 months of close pub very soon. But with that, I have to go and
no problems yet. No worries, mate.
We'll be quite safe because we'll probably be the only people in the lounge with the Christmas last night. Have a great Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, cheers, Bruce. Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Okay, so.
Sorry to take that call, but I was really enjoying that as well. See you later. All the best, everybody.
See you, Bruce.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
So I think that's probably up for 21 then. So we'll probably meet up in the early part of 2022 in those dark January days. And who knows, we might be able to do some more virtual pub crawl thinking again. So apart from that, I hope everybody has a good Christmas, and we will hopefully see you on the airways in the new year. Nick, see you hopefully Wednesday, Thursday this week. I'm losing track of time at the moment. So
yeah.
I'm off to the brewery tomorrow to get some more beers in for us. I've had the Thornbridge delivery, so I'm sure we won't go dry.
No,
so we'll be all good. Okay. All right then. I'll play some music and we'll head off.
Cheers now. Happy Christmas.